1929 and the Depression of the 1930s. Our lives, our fortunes, and our honor today are at the mercy of the Federal Reserve Board. And I'm sure most of you think that it's just another government agency. The Federal Reserve System is no more a part of our federal government than is Federal Express, the overnight package delivery people, or the federal dry cleaners. The Federal Reserve System is a private corporation owned by private individuals. It is a secret corporation. It is so secret, it is the only corporation in America that does not have to publish the names of its principal stockholders. Every other business corporation in our country has to have on file a list of its principal stockholders that are open to public inspection. The only private corporation that doesn't have to do this is the Federal Reserve System. So we don't even know who owns it. It's the most secret, mysterious corporation in America. And it's probably owned by the international bankers, by the Rothschilds and the Warburgs and the other international bankers, to whom we American taxpayers owe the national debt. You know, sometimes the press will tell us, well, don't worry about the national debt, we owe it to ourselves. Well, if we owe that national debt to ourselves, why do we have to pay $100 billion a year in interest on it? No, that national debt is owned by international bankers. And this is how the Antichrist will gain control of the world. As Meyer Anschel, the founder of the Rothschild banking dynasty, said, I don't care who makes your laws. Just let me print your money. Because he who prints the money controls the economy, controls the nation, and even controls the Congress that makes the laws. The Federal Reserve System is so secret you cannot even audit it. Now, every corporation in America is open to audit by the federal government. In 1978, a congressman introduced a law in Congress to audit the Federal Reserve. It's never been audited. But he wanted to find out what they're doing with all our money and why they've imposed this tremendous debt on the American people. By the time that law got through Congress and was passed, it said just the opposite. The Federal Reserve may not be audited. That tells you the control the Federal Reserve has over our Congress. That it can take a law introduced by a congressman and make it come through exactly opposite to what was intended. Though the Federal Reserve System is part of that great deception of which St. Paul spoke in his letter to the Thessalonians. In other words, it's a central bank that controls all the other banks in our country. And did you know that a central bank is the third plank of the Communist Manifesto, written by Karl Marx in 1848, nearly 150 years ago? If you have never read the Communist Manifesto, I would urge you to go to a large public library and get a copy. You're in for the shock of your life. The first plank of the Communist Manifesto is a federal income tax. Karl Marx was the first one to propose a federal income tax on all wage earners in a country. The second plank is to substitute paper money for real money of gold and silver. Everything that Karl Marx laid down for the economic enslavement of a nation is already in place right here in America, including women's liberation. The destruction of marriage and family life for the sake of so-called woman's liberation. Even this is spelled out by Karl Marx. So where is the reign of the Antichrist in the world today? Well, it's in Russia, where you have the economic enslavement of an entire people. It's in China, where these people are nothing but slave laborers for the Communist Party. The reign of the Antichrist is in Cambodia, where 3 million Cambodians were slaughtered by their own government. It's in Vietnam, it's in Laos, it's in Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, and right here in the United States. We are under the Communist Manifesto already. And this is what Daniel warned us about. He said most people would be totally unaware that they were being taken over by the Antichrist. When did our beloved America fall under the control of the Antichrist? We know the exact date. January the 23rd, 1973, when our Supreme Court enacted the death penalty against 20 million helpless babies in our country by abortion. This was a sign that we had fallen under the control of the Antichrist. Whenever the devil gets control of a nation, and I don't care where it is, he demands human sacrifice. That is the price that those who give themselves to the devil must pay. Now, normally in the past, this human sacrifice was paid by war, by revolution, by murder, by crime. Well, the most scientific form of human sacrifice today is abortion, where a mother's womb becomes the altar on which a human life is sacrificed to Lucifer. According to Solzhenitsyn, the communists have already killed 66 million of their own people in Russia, either through war, execution, or slave labor camps. That is the price that the communists paid to Lucifer and to his Antichrist. So where is the reign of the Antichrist today? Well, practically 2/3 of our planet has already been subjected to his power and authority. And as far as the rest of the world goes, it is just a matter of time. The World Bank will see to it that every other nation is brought to its knees through inflation, through a huge national debt. Everybody will be enslaved to this World Bank, whose chief executive is the Antichrist. The Bible and tradition also warn us that the agents of the Antichrist will infiltrate the Catholic Church and will take over its visible structures. I'm afraid this is what we are seeing today, not only in America, but throughout the world. The Antichrist will take over our schools and use them to teach modernism, which is the religion of the Antichrist. He will take over our colleges, our once great Catholic colleges. He will infiltrate and take over our chancery office, our parish offices, our United States Catholic Conference, and the like. This is described by St. John in the Apocalypse chapter 12. The woman clothed with the sun and the red dragon, who drives the church underground, who persecutes the church. And then in the following chapter 13, John warns us of this false prophet who will arise. And all the fathers of the church tell us the false prophet will be a Catholic bishop, an apostate bishop, who will join the Antichrist and help him in his rule over Catholics. This has happened many times before in history. The Jewish church was taken over by Satan. In the time of Christ, he had complete control of the Sanhedrin, the scribes and Pharisees. And he used those very leaders of the chosen people who should have led them to Christ. He used those leaders to execute their Messiah. A prime example of this would be in England under Henry VIII and Archbishop Cranmer, where they literally stole the Catholic Church away from the See of Peter. If you've ever gone to England, I'm sure you've gone to Westminster Cathedral, to York Cathedral, to those other magnificent churches there. They were once all as Catholic as this church here. And they were all stolen by Henry VIII and Archbishop Cranmer when they broke away. And 95% of Catholics went right along with that mini Antichrist. All of the clergy, all of the priests threw in with that mini Antichrist. And every bishop in England, except one, John Fisher, who was beheaded, threw in and joined that Antichrist in stealing the church from the Vicar of Christ. Well, how will his minions take over the church? By infiltration. This is their battle cry. If you can't beat them, join them. We have been infiltrated by Masons for, well, ever since their foundation, over 200 years ago. This is why our once beautiful liturgy has been so watered down. Archbishop Bugnini was a Mason. And I have this on the very best authority, who had infiltrated the Congregation for Divine Worship and did everything in his power to obscure the Mass as a sacrifice and to turn it into simply a Protestant communion service. Now, our Mass and our new liturgy is valid. If said by a validly ordained priest with the right intention, the Mass is still valid. But Bugnini did everything he could to obscure the Mass as a sacrifice and to present it simply as a meal, a Protestant communion service. And just a few months ago, I was attending a workshop with Bishop Jerome Hasrich of Texas, and he got up and said, and I quote, and he gave me permission to quote him, he said, the ICEL, the International Commission on English in the Liturgy, is trying to Protestantize our Catholic Mass, unquote. You know, they've got a new sacramentary, a new missal in the works.